Hello, ladies, and welcome back to the Latinas in Transformation podcast. Today, we're actually going to talk about the power of saying no. So, for those of you who tuned into our last episode, we did talk a little bit about boundaries and how to be able to set those up depending on where we're at in our lives. But today, we're going to focus on, again, just the power of saying no, because I know that a lot of us as Latinas, we struggle with saying no, especially in the holidays or when we're around family or people that we love. And so we're going to have Tati and Lupe here guide us on how they navigate on saying the word no and why no can be so powerful. So, ladies, let's go ahead and get started. Why is it so important to say no in the first place? I know that some of us have we struggle with saying no because we sound like we don't care. We sound like we want to distance ourselves from people. But I want us to be challenged in the most positive way of not looking at no as a negative thing, but how can no be empowering in situations
Mm.
in our lives that we can use in our daily practice and not feel ashamed.
Mhm.
Yeah, 1000%. And I feel like this goes like back to what we were talking about in our last episode about boundaries, right? And why it's so important to set healthy boundaries. I think saying no is part of setting a healthy boundary with yourself, but also helping the other person understand your capacity, right? When we don't say no, we're again like really dismissing our needs, and that doesn't make our bodies and our nervous systems feel safe, right? We create more safety in the body when we can honor our needs and honor our capacity, right? And so when we disrupt that internal boundary, like we were talking about in our last episode, again, our bodies are going to feel either really anxious or feel really angry, right? Or resentment starts to build, right? And when we have resentment, that doesn't help any relationship, right? And so, in order to support yourself, your body, but also to continue to have a healthy relationship with your loved ones, then saying no is needed, right? It's such a powerful tool. But I can understand that saying no, especially coming from a Hispanic household, it can be really difficult, right? Especially if no wasn't allowed, right? I know that for me personally, I grew up um I said no a lot to my family, but it wasn't respected. And I think because in my family, I always lived in this sympathetic state. I was always in this fight state. I was kind of labeled as like the angry person in my family. No was my go-to. So whenever I didn't want to do anything, I would say no all the time. But outside of home, when I really wanted to have someone like me, or when I was met with someone with authority, I wanted to people please. And so instead of being in this state of fight, I actually fell into the state of fawn, which is the people pleasing. And saying no was really, really difficult for me because I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be praised. I was scared of that rejection or this unconscious fear of abandonment, right? And so saying no was really difficult for me in relationships, at work. Ooh, at work. I was that employee who like took on everything. I was like a quote unquote good employee because I was a perfectionist, I was a workaholic, all the things, right? And that really came down to my inability to meet my own needs. But then at the end of the day, it led to resentment, not just at work, but again in my friendships and relationships. So that is why saying no is so important, right? And so maybe we can talk a little bit more about like how do we say no? How can we actually vocalize when we're at that capacity?
Yeah, and especially some of the points that you brought up. Some of us weren't allowed to say no. I know, for example, when I think about my own reflection growing up, no was not honored. No was more like, you're gonna do it because I said so, whether you like it or not. And I think that as we become adults, it's really hard for us to unlearn that because then, like you said, we go into this people pleasing tendencies and we put our needs last, which again results into, like you said, it was resentment. I think the word that you mentioned. And I think that a lot of us internally, we keep that inside and we just don't know how to go about it. Or guilt comes up when you want to say no as an adult and you don't know how to really cope with it. So I think going into those tools, like you said, that the of how do we now say no? How do we embrace the word no? How do we welcome no? Again, not in a place of we're trying to distance ourselves from people or be angry about it, but using no as a word to empower, inspire us to take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I think I have so many thoughts and I have so many ways of taking this conversation, but I think ultimately it comes down to no is a powerful word to take care of yourself. But so then to your question, Tati, how do you learn to say no? You learn to say no when you start taking care of yourself and when you start cutting down all the excess, like let's say like the excess fat when you're cooking, right? You start cutting that off because that's something that's irrelevant. That's not something you're going to eat, right? You want the real chunky, good stuff meat. And so when you start really narrowing down to what's the focus? What is it that I'm avoiding? What is it that I don't want to focus on? What is it that I'm running from? When you actually take it on and tackle it and realize like, oh, I need to start taking care of my health because I've been avoiding this topic. I've been avoiding the doctor because I know I have PCOS. So now I'm gonna like I don't want to go to the doctor, but you know what? You're at that age where you have to confront it. So once you start confronting it, once you start stepping up to what actually matters to you or what actually needs attention, then you start it's almost like a snowball effect. You can't help but continue to take care of yourself. And as both of you were talking, I was like, well, when was the first time I ever said no? And the first time I ever said no, like confidently, was to my doctor when I said no to the birth control, I wanted an alternative. But this is me. I just want to make something clear. I am not a health professional. I am not encouraging you to say no to your doctor. I'm just telling you my story, which was I said no because it didn't sit well with me. I felt like there should have been an alternative provided to me. And when I spoke up, the alternative was provided. But had
Mhm.
I just gone with whatever she told me, it would
Yeah.
have been like I would have like it would I would have just taken the advice for something that didn't sit well with me and that just wouldn't have gone well, I think.
Mhm.
But because I spoke up and I got an alternative, I was like, wait. So because I saw the transformation of like, wait, because I spoke up, I heard something different. And I was like, wait, so this worked. And
Hmm.
so once that happened, I started taking care of myself. I started doing things. Was I always right when I said no? Absolutely not. But I pivoted. I learned something different. I learned from my mistake. And honestly, it wasn't until like I started that eventually I got into therapy. And you know, the cycle just continued, the snowball just continued, but it all stemmed from that one moment when I started saying no to take care of myself.
Oh, that's
I
so
love
good,
that.
Lupe. And I love that you mentioned that with the word no, we're also going to not always be right. We are rediscovering, we are learning, and that's part of what it means to take care of ourselves. And I think that there are going to be so many ladies here who are barely on this journey of knowing what it's like to take care of themselves, how to build this like routine of theirs. But let's expand on that a little bit more for the one who is struggling right now, who is saying, like, well, I don't know how to take care of myself. I've never done that before. And saying no is still really, really hard. How do how do we get started in that journey of taking care of ourselves and being okay again to say no to things that don't align with us as we're rediscovering who we are?
I love that. I would say really go back to the basics, right?
Mhm.
I feel like I talk about this a lot, and it's we don't need any like fancy tools, any fancy modalities. Go back to the basics. Go back to getting your nutrients in. Go back to staying hydrated. Go back to getting sunshine, taking daily walks, right? Getting enough sleep. Just do the basics. Start there. And once you start there, once you meet your basic needs, then things will naturally start to follow, right? We can't really do much if our basic physiological needs aren't met, right? And then when we think about saying no, I would also invite you to just reflect on what it's like for you when people say no to you.
Mhm.
Because oftentimes, and this isn't for everyone, but oftentimes it can be really hard to accept a no when you have a hard time saying no. I hope that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
So, and again, it's not everyone is like that or responds in that way, but it's sort of like when I think about boundaries, right? Like, usually the people who have a hard time respecting boundaries also have a hard time setting boundaries. So, same thing with the word no. How do you feel when people say no to you? And do you have the capacity to accept that, right? So, just kind of taking a moment to reflect on that. And I think that those are two great places to start, right? Your basic physiological needs and just sitting with how do I feel when people say no? Do I actually get a little angry? Do I get
Mhm.
frustrated? Do I get anxious? Right? Like what happens for you? And
Mhm.
then yeah, sitting with that and seeing how we can take steps to shift that.
I love that. That's so good. Go ahead, Lupe.
Yeah, so I actually always, when I have my clients and they come to me and we're starting something new, it's always one step at a time. So, for example, you're struggling with your sleep, and it goes back to like, what are your needs? So you're like, I want to go to sleep early, but I can't because my partner wants to stay up late and that's the only hangout time. Okay, what's an in between that can work? And then you're going to say, listen, my boundaries are I'm going to go to sleep at this time because I want to get my 8 hours of sleep or 7 hours. Um, and start there. Like literally just start with that. Like have that conversation. Find that one thing that you really want to improve at that is going to benefit your self-care, your self-development, and work on that and start with that one step because again it's like a snowball. Once you start one thing, then you're like, then it's easy to pick up on the second thing of like, oh, that worked, now I want to fix this too. It's almost like when you do a home improvement and you're like fixing one little like hole on the wall or something and then you're like you're looking for something else to fix. Same thing. I think it's a matter of one step at a time, figuring out what's the utmost important for you to fix right now. And not fix, but because we're not like broken. It's just a improvement on us. So how do we improve on this one thing that's, we wish we could do better? Let's do it. Let's start there and let's start with one step at a time. What's one thing you can do to change that? Go forward.
I love that. Both of you guys provided such great tools. And I also want to add on that use the power of no as you also embracing your voice.
Mm,
So many of us have not allowed ourselves or given ourselves permission to say the word no because we're afraid of how people will react. We're afraid of how people will interpret us. And sometimes even just hearing our voice of saying no, like, I don't want to do that. No, that doesn't align with me. No, I'm just not comfortable. And not having to over explain because I want you to also be able to be empowered to say like no without over explaining. And for so many of us who haven't really embraced our voice, that we don't know what our voice sounds like when we say these type of things, it can feel very uncomfortable. But I also want you to explore that, see how it feels in your body, and be okay with accepting like no is a little scary to say right now.
Mhm,
I'm
mhm,
afraid to say no because I don't want my family or friends or, people that I care for to see me a different way. I am afraid of that. But be okay with accepting those feelings, but don't let those feelings block you from prioritizing what is truly important, which is
mhm,
taking care of yourself. Because as we've explained in the previous episode, boundaries are there to protect you. Boundaries are there to empower you. It is there to also allow other people to see how they need to support you and love you. So
mhm,
the more you practice your voice and the more you say the word no, even if it's like doing a script at home where you're like, hey, Edie, you wanna drink like double shots and do all these crazy things? No, I don't want to do that. that doesn't align with me anymore. Just like practice out loud, just hearing your own self saying no, and then be like, no, and no, and like make it fun too. So that way, you're embracing yourself and you're more comfortable with the word no. I know that's something that I needed to explore with when I had to say that because I was a huge people pleaser and I'm still recovering from that. Um, but that was an exercise that my therapist had me do where she was like, I just want you to go around the house and say no, no, no. And it was silly at the time. I was like, why am I going to do that? But it allowed my body to ease up to the word no and see it as a playful way so I can get comfortable with it. And then when I had to practice that with my partner, with my family, I kindly, with love, would say, no, that does not align with me. No, I can't do that right now, but maybe I could do this later,
Mhm.
right? Like it felt more comfortable. So again, ladies, like use the power of no as a chance to practice your voice and to embrace it, most importantly.
Mhm. I
And get
love that.
comfortable with it because it's a process. So we're hoping that these tools support you as you're looking forward and inwardly as well on how you navigate the word no and how you can use that as an empowering tool moving forward.
And I love how you were saying, like, you don't have to over explain yourself. Like, that. We all need that reminder. You do not have to explain yourself. No is a full sentence. And of course, like, if you want to explain why, totally go for it. But if you feel like you need to explain why, catch yourself, right? Come back, pause, come back to your body, come back to the present moment. You don't have to, right? Give yourself permission to just say no without needing to prove to someone or convince someone or explain to someone why you can't, right?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
love that. And actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking I've used no as a moment to step away and gather my feelings. And it's okay to step away and say no. Like I won't not argue with someone in the moment. I'll just be like, okay. And I'll step away, gather my feelings. What am I going through? Why am I upset or why am I sad? Whatever it is I'm going through, and then coming back. So it's okay to say, no, I don't want to deal with it right now. And giving yourself that moment and that grace period to understand your own self so that you are able to fully express what it is that needs to happen.
I love that.
Mm.
That's like it's like saying no to yourself, right?
Mhm.
Like, no, I'm not going to respond to that right now. I'm not going to react. No, right? Like it's kind of like that reminder for yourself. So yeah, I think also like thinking about how like you can say no to yourself first, right? And then also practice saying no to others.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And I was even thinking about it as well of let's just put yourself in the scenario of where you're like, I'm going to keep saying no. I find a little resistance in this, but where I want to challenge the listener that is saying, like, I'm going to continue to not say no, it's just much easier.
Mm.
I really want you to think about what the consequences are of when you don't say no, right? And I know that there can be resistance with that because it's so easy for us to people please. But I think I bring up the word consequence because, like with anything in life, there are good or bad. And I'm really big on that because we are here because we want to see you transform. And we also want to keep you accountable because we know that saying the word no is a whole shift in your energy and your way of being and your lifestyle. And for some of us, people pleasing is just so comfortable. But I really want to address, and I don't know who this is for, but this came up in my heart for the one who is still resisting and is like, nope, I'm going to stay in this comfort zone. It just is so much easier. As Tati mentioned before, the consequence of not saying no is that people don't learn your own boundaries. And when I think about boundaries, it's like a love language, y'all. It's a love language. Again, you are teaching other people on how to treat you and love you. And if you can't be your own advocate of saying no, you're just going to build a bunch of resentment. And on top of that, you're not going to live a fulfilling life, a transformed life. And so, if wherever there is resistance, I invite you to ask yourself, why is there resistance with me saying no? And explore that resistance. But also allow yourself that when you are ready to embrace the word no, allow yourself to just surrender and allow yourself to be like, you know what? I am okay with saying no, no matter what the outcome is. I am going to embrace it because overall, I know that this is going to be good for my own well-being. And you are going to also pave path for the people around you that have never said no to be in that place to embrace it and incorporate it in their own lives. So, again, we're not saying that the power of no is going to come easy. It's a great responsibility, y'all, right? With great power comes great responsibility, says Spider-Man. But but you know what I mean? But again, you got this. Like allow yourself, give yourself permission to say no and allow that to come in whatever place of love and place of empowerment, a place of inspiration where you can go out there and again, like change your life, change the narrative, and take care of yourself most importantly. So I felt that that was for somebody, and for
I love
whoever it was,
that.
I hope that it served you.
I'm sure it was for so many
Yeah.
listening right now. I also just want to say, like, you most likely will feel some discomfort saying no. Like you might feel guilt, you might feel anxiety, you might feel frustration, you might feel like emotions are going to come up. And just because those emotions come up doesn't mean that you made the wrong decision to say no. Because I think that oftentimes when we say no or we set a boundary, we're like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have done that because we're experiencing that guilt or another emotion that's coming up, right? But that doesn't mean that you weren't supposed to say no or weren't supposed to set that boundary. It just means that that's how your body's responding. So just notice, right? Just allowing yourself to be with the emotion, sort of like what Edie's was saying, right? Just allowing yourself to surrender to that because it's a normal part of the process. And the more that you practice saying no, the more that you practice saying, setting boundaries, right? The easier it will be over time.
Hmm.
Definitely. Oh, so good. So, so
I
good.
love
Lupe,
that.
it sounds like you have something to say.
I think it's just going back to the consequences part. I think it's worth like remembering that. Like, do I want to just avoid the conflict by me saying no? Or do am I gonna just face the consequences later? Like, I I want people to understand that it like how important it is to self-care and self take care of yourself because it's gonna snowball into something bigger. Like I had this one client and work was her life. And she couldn't say no to certain tasks. And therefore, that was taking out of her health time, which was
Mhm.
lunchtime, which was meal prepping at night. She was so exhausted from saying yes at work that by nighttime there's no time for her.
Mhm.
Skipping lunch, I that's like awful to me. And I am guilty of it. I at some point had that too. But all that is only going to add up because your cortisol levels are going to go up. Some interferences in your nervous system are going to cause for you to get sick. Something eventually with time, it's going to get worse. And so, if you are listening right now, I encourage you to listen to all of our advice here and just practice that no, because I wouldn't want someone with time to get sick. That's what we're trying to prevent. Think of it as you're preventing yourself from getting sick because it can sick can come from many different like avenues, could be from mental health, could be from physical health, and could be from like health. Like it's just so important to learn to just do it once a day. Like you wake up and just say no, and then go to sleep, say no. Like practice it. It's just and I'm just I just want women to be so empowered with their health and I want them to take care of themselves so badly. Don't know why I'm getting emotional
Oh no. We welcome it.
because I know many people that are still struggling and I wish that they would learn how to say no because once they do, they'll see a difference. They'll start seeing the changes happen for themselves and I just want everyone to heal. That's
A
all.
Mhm.
1000%.
I
And
love
that's
that.
beautiful. And
Yeah.
we address this too, ladies, because again, we're not gonna fluff it. Like we want you to know that these are like part of the consequences. Again, good and bad, right? And again, it's not coming at you from an angle of like mommy energy or anything like that. We just want you, again, the whole intention of this podcast is to bring in transformation in your life in different areas. And part of the power of saying no is that as well. That when we don't say no to the things that we don't align with, that can cause a lot of ripple effects in the future. It can affect your health, it can affect your mental well being, it can affect your faith, it can affect everything else that you can possibly think of. And so this isn't to scare anybody, but it's to really take that moment to step back, reflect, and say, wow, currently in my life, this is where I'm at. By me not saying no to certain things, how is this affecting certain parts of my life? And use that chance to now take intentional action moving forward on changing that. And again, we're not saying change it overnight. This takes time, right? Have grace, as Lupe mentioned earlier. Accept your feelings as they come along. Allow yourself to rest. And again, empower yourself to say that when I say no is because I'm loving me. I'm putting me first. And just as we mentioned about the not so great consequences, we're going to go into like the good parts of it. When we do take that radical action and say, like, wow, like I'm starting to say no to here, no to there, no to everybody here. Like, I'm going to make sure that no, like, no becomes a rhythm of life. And that way you can see that because there are beautiful benefits of saying no. So, ladies, in your own personal life, and Lupe, you've mentioned about your clients as well. If you guys can think of a client or your own personal life, like what are the benefits of saying no? How has that led you to a fulfilling life, a place of stepping into more authenticity, maybe even?
I
Mm.
love that. I love that. I just want to go back to what Lupe was
Mhm.
saying because I just like I felt that so deeply too because I I remember when I wasn't saying no and it obviously impacted so many things and like I felt that deeply when you were like I just want everyone to heal because I feel the same way and I know that we all feel that same way like we just want women to heal and to feel empowered and to really thrive in their lives and because we know the shifts in our lives we know how healing has really helped us thrive in our own lives, right? We want the same thing for so many women. So I just like want to like go back to that and say like I felt that in my soul, in my heart, in my body. And we can talk about like the benefits of um saying no, but I also just want to address like going back to like how it affects your health, right? Chronic illness and disease really stems from inflammation. That is the number one reason why people develop chronic health or chronic illness and diseases, right? Inflammation in the body. What is the number one thing that causes inflammation in the body? Stress.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
when we don't say no, we are causing stress to the body because, like I said earlier, right? Like when we don't say no, we are going to experience those feelings of resentment, anger, frustration, disappointment, whatever. The list can go on. That when we don't when we don't release that energy from the body, that quite literally stays trapped in the body, causing more stress to the body, leading to more inflammation, leading to more chronic illness and disease, right? And so, like, we're not just kind of like saying it to say it. Like these are actual facts that like we really want you to understand that it's not just about saying no. It's about what happens in the body and the mind and the soul, everything, right?
Mhm.
When we don't say no, right? But going back to like the benefits of saying no, right? Like I think for me personally, what I've noticed is I do feel more empowered when I get to say no, when I get to use my voice, like Edie's was saying. And I feel like there's more flow in my body. For example, when I wasn't saying no, I felt a lot of anxiety. I resentment for sure. And like I remember in my friendships, for example, I wouldn't say no for so many reasons, but then I felt like that resentment of like, oh, like they're not meeting my needs,
Yeah.
or why are they doing XYZ, or whatever it is, right? And that resentment over time just kept building and building, right? So it wasn't from that resentment wasn't from like one incident, it was from all of the other times,
Mm,
right? And then that ultimately led to like feeling anxious anytime a difficult conversation would come up with these relationships, like, oh, I don't want to like say it again, like, or like I don't want to like say what I'm thinking, I don't want to hurt their feelings or whatever it is, right? And so once I started actually being in my body, right, and being able to just feel those feelings and start speaking up, start saying no, start setting boundaries, I felt like this relief in my body. So like I no longer felt like this anxiety that was like building up. It's like, oh my gosh, like, oh, how are they going to respond? What am I going to say? Oh my gosh, right? It's like, no, like it's okay to say no. Like I have more ease and flexibility and flow in my body, and it's just like a weight lifted off your shoulders. And again, it didn't happen the very first time. It was over time as I kept practicing. It's a muscle that you have to build.
I
mhm,
love that. That is so, so good. And the words that came up to me as you said that was ease,
mm,
ease. And I'm going
Mhm.
to say it again, ease. That, you guys, is a great benefit for all of us to feel because I know that that also can maybe cause some resistance for some of us where we're like, well, I don't know what that feels like, but you can have that, and that's accessible to you
mhm,
because your life may not be easy, but it can move with ease. And that is a huge health benefit. It helps with our soul, it helps with how we navigate life. And so I hope that you take that word in with you because you can have that as well.
mhm. I think also no becomes a trickle effect with those around you. So I think about my health journey and the times I would say no to drinking or no to carbs or no because I want a veggie on the table. Um, my family now knows we always have to have a veggie. So I've influenced them. In multiple workspaces, I'd be like, no, I'm not eating. Because when you're like around your coworkers, you want to go grab like something sweet or you want to go on a quick little coffee break. Not that coffee is bad, I know it is, but but like little breaks that would otherwise instigate you to like eat something that's not healthy. It in many multiple instances, it instigates them to be like, oh no, actually, let's try something healthy today. And so your no now influences other people, and now you have a whole tribe behind you. Now you have your whole coworkers supporting you. Now you have your partner supporting you. Now you have your family supporting you. Like, don't think no as a negative, but as a positive, and the influence and the amount of changes that you can even bring. For me, diabetes is such a big thing in my family. So the fact that now we know you have to have a green at every family function, I'm so happy for everyone because that's only helping us, right? So just think about the positivity you can bring to those around you.
Mm,
1000%. I love
I-
that.
that
I
was
love.
really, really good.
Mhm.
That was you guys have both have dropped so many gems on the benefit of it. And again, I just want to go back to really emphasizing that saying no, y'all, the benefit of that is that you're teaching people how to love you.
Yeah.
And I feel
Mm,
like that has been my biggest experience with saying no and showing myself that I'm a priority. By saying no, I'm literally not just teaching people to take care of me, but I am taking care of myself. And that is beautiful because, when I think about my life, I've always prioritized other people's needs. I'm always doing that. And by being able to say no, being comfortable with my own voice with saying no, knowing what it is that my body needs, what my soul needs, and what my mental well-being needs, that's allowed me to live with more, like Tati said, ease. Like Lupe said too, like it shows my family an example of what that looks like. And I
mm,
gain peace. And that is beautiful. That's like priceless, y'all. And I can truly say that I've stepped into a life of peace because of saying no to certain things that no longer align with me, that don't really make me feel joyful, that don't bring me fulfillment. That has been the ripple effect of being like, wow, I live in peace now. I live with being comfortable with who I am, and others know how to love me because I say no and set those boundaries.
I have one last tidbit because you said love. So after my health journey and learning how to say no, eventually I started saying no to the things that didn't matter and therefore focus on the things that did matter the most. Even so, in the type of relationship, romantic relationship I was looking for, that eventually led me to now the love of my life. So it was because I started practicing no, I realized what did matter.
Yep.
And when I knew what did matter, my focus was better. And I was able to find that person that lined up with me.
I love that so much. I love it. You know what that made me think of? Like, I say no a lot. Like that is like in my life now, that's like my go-to. If like I don't want to do something, I won't do it. And like that's just how I live my life. But when I say yes, people know that I truly want to do it. That it's not because I feel bad, that it's not because I feel like I have to. Like people trust that when I say yes, it's because it's coming, it's a genuine yes. It's not like a, yeah, I'll do it, but I really don't want to, right? Like, and I think that really helps strengthen relationships too. I'm thinking about just like my relationship with my husband with Marcin, like I feel like he knows like I only say yes if I truly mean it, and I feel like it's really important to and I'm not talking about like little things. Sometimes we have to like do things that we don't want to do, but they're like minor. But when it comes to like bigger significant things, I think it's important to really only say yes when it's coming from the heart, when you genuinely want to say yes, right?
That is powerful. If, exactly. And when you guys combine both of those things, the word intentionality really comes up for me. That results intentionality. You live a life not based on what other people are dictating you to live, but you intentionally step into not just your power, but you intentionally start living. And that's beautiful, y'all. I'm all about intentionality. I mean, that is what transformed my life, and that probably will be another podcast episode. But that all of these benefits that we just mentioned, ease, peace, being able to model to our family and be the example, how intentional we can be, accepting our feelings, exploring what, saying no looks like and feels like in our body, right? All of these things will help you. And then also reflecting on what are the consequences if I don't say no. So I'm going to leave it with you to take whatever serves you at this very moment and apply whatever it is that you need to start applying now. Because y'all, 2024 is about to end, but that does not mean you have to wait until 2025. Start transforming your life right now. Use these tips now, even if it's baby steps. So we hope that this served you. We hope that this transforms you. And remember, y'all, stay lit. So we will catch you soon and take care of yourselves.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on Lit Podcast. We hope this conversation has ignited a spark within you so that you keep embracing your journey.
Remember, transformation takes time, but every step brings you closer to the life you're meant to live. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and leave a review.
Let's continue this journey together. Until next time, stay lit and keep transforming.